The Echo of Absence by Stoiccat. The air smelled of rain-soaked earth, and regret the night I left Elias behind. It wasn't a dramatic exit. No slamming doors, no tear-streaked shouting matches under a flickering porch light. It was quiet, deliberate, like the way a shadow slips from a room when the sun dips below the horizon. I packed my leather satchel, the one he'd always teased me about for looking too worn to hold anything valuable, and walked out into the damp streets of that small coastal town we'd called home for 3 years. My boots clicked against the cobblestones, a steady rhythm that matched the pulse of my resolve. I didn't look back. Not once. Elias didn't chase after me. I knew he wouldn't. He was the kind of man who let silences speak for him, who wore his pride like armor forged from years of being let down. But I also knew he'd feel the void I left behind. Not right away, maybe not even for weeks, but eventually. People don't forget those who carve something deep into their souls, even if they don't realize it until the blade's gone. We met by accident, or so it seemed at the time. I was 27, a drifter with a penchant for sketching strangers in coffee shops, and he was 32, a mechanic with oil-stained hands and a laugh that could pull you out of the darkest moods. It was late spring, the kind of day where the breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine through the open windows of a cramped diner. I'd been sketching a waitress with tired eyes when he slid into the booth across from me. Uninvited, a cup of black coffee in hand. "You're wasting your talent on her," he'd said, nodding toward the waitress. "She's too busy to care about being immortalized." I raised an eyebrow, pencil hovering over the page. "And you think you're a better subject?" He grinned, a lopsided thing that made his brown eyes crinkle. "I'm a mess worth capturing." He wasn't wrong. Elias had a rugged charm. Not the polished kind you'd find in magazines, but something raw, like a cliff face weathered by storms. It wasn't his looks that hooked me, though. It was the way he made me feel, like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve, not fix. Most people try to mend you when they see your edges fraying. Elias didn't. He'd just sit there, listening, asking questions that made me think harder about who I was than I ever had before. That's the thing about impressions. They don't come from grand gestures or glittering surfaces. They're born in the quiet spaces, the moments when someone sees you, really sees you, and doesn't flinch. Elias had a way of doing that, and I suppose I did too. We weren't perfect together. Far from it. We argued over trivial things. Whose turn it was to cook, why I left my sketchbooks scattered across the living room floor. But beneath it all was a current, a pull that neither of us could name. It wasn't love, not in the storybook sense. It was something rarer, something that gnawed at you when it was gone. People think forgetting is easy when someone stops caring. They're wrong. The less someone clings, the more you feel tethered to them. Elias and I didn't say, "I love you" often. We didn't need to. Words like that felt cheap compared to the way he'd sit with me on the pier at dusk, watching the waves crash while I sketched the horizon, or how I'd leave him coffee on the counter before dawn because I knew he'd be up early fixing someone's busted engine. Those small acts wove us together, tighter than declarations ever could. But threads fray. They always do. 3 years in, the silences between us grew heavier. He started staying late at the garage, not because he had to, but because it was easier than coming home to the tension we'd let build. I'd spend hours walking the cliffs alone, sketching the sea until my fingers cramped, trying to outrun the restless ache in my chest. We weren't fighting anymore. We were drifting. 2 ships passing in a fog, too stubborn to call out. I could have stayed. I could have fought harder, begged him to talk, to care again. But I didn't. Not because I stopped loving him, whatever that word meant to us, but because I knew my worth wasn't tied to his attention. The day I decided to leave, I sat on the edge of our bed, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell, steady as ever. And for a moment, I almost faltered. Almost. Then I stood, packed my bag, and walked out. Moving forward isn't the same as letting go. I learned that in the months after I left, I took a train north, settling in a city where the streets buzzed with noise and the air tasted of steel. I found work in an art gallery, framing other people's masterpieces while my own sketches piled up in a corner of my tiny apartment. Life kept moving, relentless and indifferent, but Elias lingered in the margins of my thoughts. Not as a ghost I longed for, but as a question I couldn't quite answer. I'd left with dignity, head high. No pleas or tears. That's what made it stick, I think. When you walk away without groveling, you leave a mark. A hollow space that echoes louder than any argument. I didn't know if he'd miss me at first. Elias was too proud to admit it, even to himself. But I'd seen it before, in others I crossed paths with. The ones who mattered most weren't the ones who stayed too long or fought too hard. They were the ones who left you wondering what you'd lost. A year passed. Then too, I heard through a mutual friend that Elias had sold the house by the sea. He moved inland, started working in a bigger garage, one with neon signs and a steady stream of customers. He's doing fine, she'd said, her tone casual. Doesn't talk about you much. I nodded, unsurprised. Elias wasn't the type to confess a wound, but I knew better. People don't forget the ones who made them feel something real, even if it stings. There's power in not being afraid to lose someone. It flips the script. When you're willing to walk away, you become the one they can't let go of. I'd learned that long before Elias, back when I was a kid watching my mother navigate a string of lovers who always came crawling back. She never chased them. She'd just smile, pack their bags, and point to the door. You'll figure it out, she'd say, calm as a still lake. And they always did, usually too late. With Elias, I didn't play games. I didn't leave to manipulate him or test his loyalty. I left because staying would have dulled the edges of who I was. But that choice, that quiet strength, planted something in him. I could feel it, even from 100 miles away. He'd remember me not as the woman who begged for his time, but as the one who valued her own enough to walk away. I'd always been the steady one, the calm in his chaos. When his temper flared over a stubborn engine or a customer's complaint, I'd sit there, sketching, letting him vent until the storm passed. He'd call me his anchor, half joking, but I saw it in his eyes. He meant it. People don't forget the ones who hold them steady when the world tilts. They don't forget the ones who challenge them, either. I never let Elias coast. When he'd shrug off a dream, open his own shop, maybe I'd push him. Why not? I'd ask, pencil tapping the table. What's stopping you? He'd grumble, but I saw the wheels turning. I wasn't his cheerleader. I was his mirror, reflecting what he could be if he stopped hiding behind excuses. One night, 3 years after I left, I got a letter. No return address, just my name scrawled in Elias's jagged handwriting. I sat on my fire escape, the city humming below, and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. No greeting, no signature, just words. You were right about the shop. Took a loan, opened it last month. It's a mess, but it's mine. Thought you want to know. I read it twice, then tucked it into my sketchbook. He didn't say he missed me. He didn't have to. That letter was proof of the dent I'd left in his life. The way I'd nudged him towards something better. People don't forget the ones who helped them grow, even if it's a slow, grudging kind of growth. Those memories stick, sharp and stubborn, long after the wounds heal. Charisma isn't about flash. It's about depth. Elias and I had a chemistry that defied logic. A push and pull that kept us orbiting each other. Even when we clashed, it wasn't always easy or pretty, but it was alive. Those raw, electric moments, the late night talks, the way he'd watch me sketch like I was unraveling some mystery, etched themselves into us both. I knew they'd surface for him in quiet moments, just like they did for me. A song on a radio, the smell of coffee, the sound of waves. They'd drag him back to me, unbidden. Attraction isn't skin deep. It's the way someone makes you feel, seen, challenged, alive. I wasn't the prettiest woman he'd ever met, and he wasn't the richest man I'd known, but we gave each other something no one else could. A spark that burned without consuming. That's what lingers. Leaving with dignity isn't just an exit. It's a statement. When I walked out that rainy night, I didn't beg Elias to stop me. I didn't need his validation to know my worth. That calm, that certainty, it's what made my absence a void he couldn't ignore. People don't miss the ones who cling. They miss the ones who leave a silence too big to fill. I imagined him in that house after I'd gone, staring at the empty chair where I used to sketch, the coffee pot I'd always filled. My absence wasn't loud. It was subtle, pervasive, like a painting stripped from a wall, leaving only the faint outline of where it once hung. He'd feel it, even if he wouldn't admit it. And that's the trick. When you don't chase approval, people start questioning their own judgment. They wonder what they missed, what they undervalued. Years later, I heard he'd named his shop Driftwood Repairs. I smiled when I heard it. Driftwood, like the pieces I collect on the beach and sketch while he watched. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a nod, a quiet tether to me. I didn't need to see him again to know I'd left a mark. Walking away with my head, I had done that. It wasn't about proving anything to him. It was about proving it to myself. Leaving isn't just an end. It's a legacy. When you go with grace, you don't just vanish. You echo. Elias would carry me in the back of his mind, not as a regret, but as a lesson in value. And I'd carry him too. Not as a loss, but as a piece of my story. A chapter closed with quiet strength. The rain still smells like that night sometimes. I'll sit by my window, sketching the city skyline, and feel the weight of what we were. Not longing, just recognition. I didn't need Elias to complete me, and he didn't need me to save him, but we shaped each other, left grooves too deep to sand away. That's the beauty of it. When you leave with dignity, you don't just walk away. You linger, not as a shadow, but as a light that flickers long after you're gone. And this story, penned by Stoiccat, is a slow burn of emotion and reflection designed to draw readers into the subtle power of self-worth and the lasting impact of those who depart with grace. It's a tale of connection, not conclusion, leaving the audience to ponder the echoes we all leave behind.